What's going on, beautiful people? It's G-Rex the Great, aka your friendly neighborhood comic enthusiast, and we are here. Now, if you're new to the channel, I want to say welcome, and if you're not new, welcome back. So today we're going to be covering some new news coming out of DC with the comic universe. We got some news coming about Superboy Prime. He's going to be taking over the mantle of Superman coming after DCKO, which will take place about March 2026. We got an article here from Comic Book Resources. You know we love Comic Book Resources over here. And we got John Doge coming in. He dropped 3 days ago. And it says DC Comics is set to take on 2026 with a Superman other than the Clark Kent fans know and love. And the next Man of Steel is one of the worst of all time. If you don't know, Superboy Prime was an absolute demon coming out of Infinite Crisis back in like the 80s, the 90s. Basically, he wiped out every single person, broke reality in like 4 seconds. The man was wilding. But he had a redemption arc coming out of Superman by Joshua Williams, and we're gonna get into him a little bit later too, especially dealing with DCKO. Him and Scott Snyder been tag teaming on that right there. But if you've been reading Joshua Williamson, you know Superboy Prime actually had a redemption arc. He just saved Lois Lane actually, since Superman been out the picture with the tournament and whatnot. But getting back to the article, it says, as noted by fan and industry news account DCU Updates in a recent X post, writer Joshua Williamson has confirmed that Superboy Prime will be stepping up to fill in for Clark Kent as Superman following the events of DCKO. The shift is set to take place in Superman number 36, which is currently slated for release on March 25th. Then we got the post right here from DC Updates. It says Joshua Williams. Basically everything that we just read there. We got the cover here drawn by the GOAT, Dan Mora. Anything drawn by Dan Mora, we get automatically. You already know that here. It says the official solicit synopsis for Superman number 36 from DC Comics reads, after the shocking events of DCKO, Superman is missing, but one hero steps up to take his place, Superboy Prime. The solicit continues. Normally, Prime has only been part of massive DC events, like I mentioned earlier, with like Infinite Crisis and stuff like that. I think he popped out in Doomsday Clock. I might be bugging, but I think he popped out over there too. It says, but now he gets a real shot at showing the world he can be just as great a hero as Superman. Superstar artist The GOAT, Dan Moore, returns for Superman in an action-packed and fun adventure that changes the face of the DC universe. So that kind of spoils the end of DCKO a little bit right there, but we're not really worried too much about it. I mean, they already confirmed that it was a Superman-centered story from the jump, so even though they telling us that he's going to take a little leave of absence after the event, it's not really spoiling what happened to him, so we still got a little bit of surprise here and there. It says the variant of Kal-El, aka Clark Kent, aka Superman, but best known of all as Superboy Prime, hails from the reality of Earth Prime. Superboy Prime made his debut in pages of 1985's DC Comics Presents number 87 by Elliot Maggin and Kurt Swan, which introduced readers to a world where superheroes like Superman exist only in comics. So basically that's just like the real world, like where we in right now. Superboy Prime came from here type shit, and he ended up swapping universes and came over to the DC Comics universe. He got the powers of Superman, and he basically idolized Superman to the point to where once you got that shift from the Silver Age going into like the Bronze Age of comics, where Superman wasn't so like jolly-go-lucky, Boy Scoutish so much anymore, where you had like more depth going into the characters, where you saw them face more like inner struggles, and you saw them not just beat up the bad guy, do the good thing, and end the story. And that kind of like struck Superboy Prime wrong. So he was like, nah, all of this is dead. He was like, nah, all of this don't make sense. And he basically went against everybody. So that's where all that kicked in from. But going back to the article, it says, at least that was the case until a tear in the multiverse itself sent the primary Superman hurtling into Superboy Prime's world, paving the way for him to become a Man of Steel of his own. After his reality was destroyed during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earth, Superboy Prime started down a dark path that ultimately led to him to become one of the strongest and most feared villains in comic book history. In the years since his debut, Superboy Prime has single-handedly stood against some of the greatest heroes of all time, and even torn his way through the walls of the multiverse itself. This made it all more surprising when Superboy Prime returned to help Superman stand up to the might of Darkseid. And it says, we got the head of DCKO right here. We got the picture, what happened to Superman with the DCKO title right here. Reading on with the article, it says, currently, the Superman fans know best is fighting not just for his life, but for the fate of every single reality as part of DCKO's comics event. With the threat of Darkseid unsharing his own crisis looming overhead, 32 of the strongest and most capable heroes and villains from across the DC universe were brought together for an epic fighting tournament to decide who among them will have the power to stop Darkseid in his tracks. And that's where we end in the article there. We basically just got just a little read through of Clark Kent, Superman, and stuff like that there. But that's just a basic breakdown of what we got going on after DCKO, going into March, where we have Superboy Prime taking over the mantle of Superman. We're gonna go deep further into the solicits a little more later. We're gonna do another video covering every comic that's gonna come out from the beginning of March, I want to say, to about mid-April-ish. We're gonna cover most of that, but we're gonna have that coming out later. So shout out Comic Book Resources for having that article there, giving us the information of what's going on after DCKO. So go ahead and end you there. Shout out to y'all if y'all popped through, read through this article with me, man. Shout out to y'all. Like the video if you enjoyed what you saw. Drop a comment. Let me know what you're thinking about DCKO, the aftermath, and Superboy Prime himself. One of the GOATs, honestly. Drop a sub if you want to be one of the greats. You already know what we do here, man. Shout out to y'all. Appreciate y'all, man. Shout out y'all. Be safe. Spread peace, love, kind, positivity, all of those good things I tell y'all, man. Shout out to y'all.